Welcome to the All Things DER podcast, brought to you by AEIC. In this podcast, we dig in, define, and discuss where the new energy economy is heading with electric industry leaders and explore all the ways that distributed energy resources can modernize and improve our ever-evolving power grid. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome to the All Things DER podcast. I am Dr. Elizabeth Cook, and on today's episode, we have Andy Parker, who's the manager of the DER Integration and Strategy team at Ameren. Hi, Andy. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, good afternoon, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your role and the company that you work for?
Yeah, as you said, Elizabeth, my title is the manager of DER Integration and Strategies for Ameren Illinois. I also head Ameren's voltage optimization program. And really for the DER Integration Strategies team, we're responsible for policies, procedures. We do some of the interconnection studies, any proceedings, and really looking into even some of the forecasting and growth that we have with DER across Ameren, Illinois today.
Awesome. So you're at the core of all things DER. So you're a great guest for this conversation today. So something that we've been talking about and continuously talking about, we're in this transformation as an electric utility space where we're looking to the edge of the grid as the technologies become more available and our customers start to adopt them. So from your perspective, what growth are you experiencing when we talk about distributed energy resources? Remembering, and this is really for the listeners, this is anything from on-site generation, intermittent, aka solar, dispatchable, your base diesel and or CHP, and then you have your interactive charging and a lot of vehicle to grid, or your energy demand or demand response programs that are ultimately becoming available. So anything on that sort. So which ones are you experiencing and would like to talk about today?
Yeah, great question. So really, Illinois, as part of the clean energy transition, there's a lot of incentives. So we're seeing a lot of solar growth, and incentives could be the federal tax rebate that came out of the Inflation Reduction Act, renewable energy credits, net metering, smart inverter rebate, just to name a few. But really starting in 2019 timeframe, we really started seeing a high rise in solar growth across Ameren, Illinois. And as we work through this, the IPA, the Illinois Power Agency's long-term renewable resource plan, and the REC credits drive a lot of that growth. So we're seeing just a massive increase in solar growth from that. Seeing a little bit of wind, and really just recently, I'd say over the past 2 years, started seeing some energy storage growth, really in the form of batteries, more on the residential side.
So within your team, the DER integration strategy, is you're the team that's ultimately setting up kind of the interconnection process, making sure, how they're onboarded and really the studies and the dynamics of like what happens on the grid, or like what place does your team kind of oversee?
Yeah, great question. So in Illinois, we are governed by the Illinois Administrative Code, parts 466 and 467. So a lot of that is kind of writes the rules for us, and we're to abide by them. But yes, my team is responsible for the policies, procedures that go into that, a lot of the analysis guides for doing different reviews of all levels across our system. We handle reviews within my team, but mostly within our region engineering staff and our planning folks across Ameren, Illinois.
Dynamic for sure. So this is going to be a good one. As we're facing the reality of this grid edge technology phenomena, what do you foresee as really, I like to say opportunities, some may say challenges, as we transition to this clean, and specifically, like how does the grid changing from your perspective?
Yeah, I like that question a lot, because I tend to think the same way, that with any challenge is an opportunity. So I think really the advancements and technologies that we're seeing are really allowing the electric grid of the future to be more smart and flexible, reliable, and really further involved. And we're seeing that firsthand. It's nice being a part of that. It's really leading to a lot of our policies and procedures, processes that are evolving. And we've got an interconnection working group that we're working through within Illinois with a lot of stakeholders that'll bring a lot of engagement, likely some changes to our interconnection rules. And really, we're seeing a lot of updated policies, procedures to reflect our learnings as a company, best practices as we engage with other utilities and stakeholders. And then really, as I mentioned earlier, with the growth that we're seeing, we're starting to see bidirectional power flow. Customers have more options out there to control their generation and usage. And there's just a lot going on right now, and just a really good space to be in.
One thing I take away, being a part of the AEIC DER subcommittee, a lot of our conversation focuses around the technologies and the technologies that enable the solar, the charging, the batteries, and the load management programs that we kind of talk about. But what I think is becoming a very quick phenomena that those conversations we've seen and we've proven out the capability to manage a large many-to-many model. I think we're at all different phases of being able to do that across the different utilities in regards to the modeling, the data, the analytics, and really what there has to happen to really onboard and create that reality. But the technologies and the ability for it to be done has been proven. And the one thing that you said really that you're working on, and it's dynamically changing, is the procedures and processes and really the policies that really enable this new reality. So just like for our listeners, like what's an example of a procedure or a process that is like new to the perspective of distribution planning and how you're looking at the system holistically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say some that come to mind is we're on a lot of our larger installs now where we have the capabilities of enabling direct transfer trip. I think that's one. Really looking at SCADA control devices, bringing that visibility to the system. Maybe not control because it's not always the right time. We're actually limited to some level by our Illinois admin code. Really looking at behind the meter generation and where that's appropriate, or just some examples that we've made in the policy to really try to get that information back and really operate and plan a more dynamic grid.
So thinking about the podcast being, a conversation to educate and drive that awareness. So like from Ameren's perspective, like having your system modeled and running hosting capacity analysis or the data analytics, is that something that is growing within your group, or is that a group that's, because I think another thing that's happening is the structure within utilities, because of this new technology and our need to enable it, it's creating, different needs within the utility space. So is your team a part of the system planning group, or do you guys work synergistically together, or what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Currently, we're structured under different organizational directors, but yeah, my team definitely plays a hand in hosting capacity. We actually just posted our first run at hosting capacity maps in August of 2022.
Jealous.
Yeah, brought out a lot of stakeholder engagement and feedback, trying to make sure that we keep grid security in mind while also trying to get information out there to developers and installers that is useful to help them plan and develop locations that are suitable.
Right. And for you, I don't know how long you've been at Ameren, but I feel like going from a world where you did not need to have your distribution models in a computer simulation, because, it was the one-way power flow where you had your substation breaker, you had your circuit feeder leave, and you ultimately could really keep track and count the utilization of that circuit based on the number of meters and our customers. So like what has the evolution been within Ameren in regards to being able to have that capability in-house?
Yeah, we currently plan and really are evolving. We do what we call our annual load analysis, where we look at, historically, it was just looking at system peaks. Most of our system peaks in the summer months. We do have some winter peaking circuits, but we're really evolving to more of a holistic view, looking at 8760. We're not quite there yet, but we'll eventually, and really starting to look into some load forecasting or advanced planning tools, and really trying to update some of our technologies and software that comes with that.
In regards to, I keep throwing some questions at you. You spoke about the growth you've actually seen that bi-directional power flow occur. And is that mostly due to the proliferation, or really the clustering of the solar on a particular circuit, or how do you see that manifest on each of your circuits? Is it there's a rule of thumb, or is it a case by case kind of perspective?
Yeah, I would say mostly it's due to what we refer to as community solar, which is typically 2 megawatt to 5 megawatt installs. But we have seen circuits across, at least one that comes to mind across our service territory, that aggregated residential DERs on a circuit, solar, rooftop solar, cause reverse power flow at the substation. So we have a very urban and rural area. We just cover a wide footprint across Ameren, Illinois. So it's really going to vary circuit by circuit, and some circuits will be able to be capable of more generation than others for sure.
And do you find as a part of the process of like now that you're seeing this type of interaction of DER, mostly focusing on solar, like that need or awareness that, as you said, we used to plan for peak. So we would look to the system, look for the peak and then plan accordingly. But now seeing the dynamic changes that this new generation at the edge can do is like additional approaches such as non-wire solutions or looking at customer programs, a part of your overall planning purview or solutions that could be proposed?
Yeah, absolutely. We just started, it was last year, the year before, looking at a minimum load case in addition to the peak, taking into account solar and other aspects, and definitely looking at non-wires alternatives as options within our integrated grid plan that we filed. We had 2 potential options for at least projects that may be suitable for NWA if they prove to be cost effective. So yeah, definitely going on the path of incorporating NWAs and really it could be of any type. It could be battery storage, demand response, solar, any of that. As a utility that can own generation, we really want to be open-minded and make sure third parties and along with us, maybe there's an opportunity for the utility to treat it as an asset that we do what's best for the grid and our customers.
I think something fascinating that's happened fairly quickly. So when I came into the utility space, prior I was a consultant for other utilities, but working within a utility, and I was in the system planning chair, so overseeing the transmission and distribution and the models. A lot of our customers would come to us, after they planned their vision or their needs, and we were the last to know. So I recall now within the last 3 years, the amount of consulting or really giving advice to our customers is really providing that benefit in advance so that, as you said, all of these devices are particularly behind the meter, which is not a part of the wires only company. However, as these technologies become available, you're more or less saying, implying that they also can become a part of how the grid is served. So it's like a holistic view instead of the customer being served at one location and they're done. It's like, how can we start encompassing all of these dynamic new customers in a way that benefits the grid instead of puts a detriment to the grid, it's very exciting because, as you know, instead of just 1 or 2 solutions, now we have 5 or 6 possible solutions that we can choose, but it all comes down to really that cost benefit analysis and really what the use case is. So there's lots of areas for strategy per your group.
Yeah, one thing to add into that, I appreciate that and agree. We haven't talked much about EVs and really vehicle to grid, but I think when you start talking about that, thinking about not only the economic and environmental benefits of EVs, but there's potential for grid benefits as far as allowing for charging at times that are better or off peak. You can improving load factor during the day and really just looking at the overall aspect and how that plays a part in addition to all the solar and other technologies that are integrating our grid today.
And I think, we talk about all this stuff and we can't lose sight of the amount of effort and capability that must be built foundationally to be able to have these types of analytics and really drive these insights is pretty big. So I like to say that what we're doing to have this type of data, to build the models, to run the analytics, to drive the insight, requires this uplift, but it's a no regrets, because not only are you going to be serving our customers more safely, reliably, affordably, but now you're setting yourself up for these new customer programs that honestly, we don't know they could benefit until you actually see the numbers and start to understand what the grid impacts are. But yeah, managing that EV charge is a big one on, I think, a lot of our minds, especially as electrification happens with our heating and cooling, right? That's going to drive a new load that we haven't had to experience on top of the solar that you are seeing massive increase in. But being that we're both optimists here, I think, having the strategy in place, right? And having the tools and the whole situational awareness of your grid really will put you in a position to help support and drive this future to reality. So I just ask you, like in your journey at Ameren, in the role that you've played, what are some of the lessons that hindsight's 2020 that you wish you would have known before going down a certain path?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think through a lot of this and what we're learning through our grid plan and filing and all that, I think stakeholder engagement, and you touched on educating customers. I think that's very critical. The stakeholders can bring a lot of value, and really when you work together in a collaborative manner and reach a kind of a mutual agreement, might not always be the exact solution someone's looking for, but a lot of times you can work together and meet. I think that helps inform a lot of the policies, procedures. A lot of the state rules are driven off of that. I think looking into, we talked about hosting capacity maps that we engaged customers and stakeholders in. We've got our public facing interconnection guide to kind of get that information, make customers more educated when they apply for solar. Here's the process, here's how it works, some estimated costs. We've got our public facing Q report out there, but I think one of the biggest lessons is get that information out there to the customers, make sure they're informed, whether that's posting on our website, whether it's email, correspondence, phone calls. It's just really, really important to make sure that they're educated so they could be part of the solution with our evolving grid.
It's good. I definitely agree. Well, with that, do you have any last words or any share? Otherwise, I want to say thank you for taking the time explaining Ameren's journey, and I look forward to working with you on the DER subcommittee.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I appreciate you having me today.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of All Things DER. Thanks for tuning in. We hope today's conversation got you thinking about new and creative ways to improve our power grid. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to hear new episodes. This podcast is brought to you by AEIC, the place where operations leaders come together to share knowledge and provide guidance to the electric utility industry. We'll be back with a new episode soon. Until then, keep powering on.